This is the Authority Partners podcast.
Welcome to the Authority Partners podcast. Today my guest in studio is Ammar Arnautovic. We will talk about really interesting topic today. Are enterprises agile for agile? Before we go into the subject, let me welcome Ammar, who is a software architect at Authority Partners with a decade of experience with IT systems in the corporate giants of banking, mortgage, and finance business. Ammar enjoys reading about the innovations of the tech world while seated next to his family on an aircraft to another amazing travel destination from his vacation bucket list. Ammar, welcome, and can you tell us what's the next on your bucket list?
Hello. Thank you for having me here. Well, my bucket list is pretty large. I've always wanted to visit Tokyo. It never comes to that, but hopefully someday I'll visit that as well.
So you're going to travel to another closer cities while planning to visit Tokyo. Great. Well, let's go back to the amazing world of IT. How do the software and IT departments play along with enterprises?
Well, for some while now, we've all been talking about agile methodologies, mostly Scrum, and this has been embedded in every software developer's mindset. And usually the younger colleagues have this as a default setting, so they read about it, they go online. Most of the blogs are talking about Scrum in some startups, cool consumer-facing applications. While this sounds so fun, it's the dream of every developer to work on a system that will reach production almost instantaneously. They start daydreaming and they come supposedly to an enterprise, to a big corporation, and want to work in the way that they have just been reading about. However, that's when it hits them that enterprises function in a completely different way. They have to go through different CAB meetings, a lot of meetings for that matter, where they need to get approval for everything they do. And that's when this agile state of mind comes to a pause. Everything stops and it has to take a different turn. It has to function in a completely different way. So let's say we have a use case when the developer wants to submit something to a production environment. Then they have to formally send an email asking for approval. What usually happens is that this is only a formality. They send the email for approval, but they still roll out their code to production. So imagine if, as a reality, we would get retroactively an answer from the corporate VIPs that the release is not approved and it's already in production. So you can just imagine what trouble this would cause.
Well, how does that work elsewhere? How do they fit into Agile?
It's not only about these CAB meetings, about these approvals, because Agile is not about cutting these corners, doing things retroactively. Agile is basically about planning it and about having the whole ecosystem think about smaller units and iterations, realistic iterations that can be met. So as said, it's not only about CAB meetings, it's about all the firewall considerations, new frameworks, any architecture change in the system. This all has to go through discussions with a whole board of very important people. And this very same board usually requires a complete roadmap, usually 1 year in advance. They tend to work on forecasts. They tend to work with a lot of unknowns, so they do not take a lot of argument and smaller pieces into consideration. And the reality is, when they start to hit deadlines, they tend to take shortcuts. They like to strip away the things that they think they don't need. An example is they would strip away the testing time of a software. And it's not about that they are working around estimating how much time it is required to build a software. They are estimating around how much they are willing to invest in a software, which eventually is not the best approach. There are even companies which introduced they call it, introduced Agile into their C-level, and they said that they are working in sprints that are lasting for 4 months. So there are like 3 sprints per year. This basically isn't Agile. This is just waterfall pretending to be Agile.
Do we move away from waterfall? Like, should we move away, or what would be the optimal solution?
I think that we should not completely move away from waterfall. It obviously does have its pros. It does have a reason to exist, and it can be embedded with the world of Agile. Basically, enterprise processes have to change from top to bottom. They have to be more aware of the software development life cycle, which is moving at a fast pace, which is moving in the Agile pace. They have to be mindful of the software development life cycle, but at the same time, the software development life cycle should also know about these things that drive the enterprise system. They should mind the conventional ways that the enterprises calculate time and material, how they calculate the budget. They work mostly with quarterly and yearly budgets. So one should not step on the toes of the other, and vice versa.
So to conclude, are we even close to where we want to be?
We are shifting towards the middle of the transition between the enterprise decisions which are driving the software development life cycle, and at the same time where the software development life cycle is impacting the decisions of enterprise systems. We are not close. We are on a good path to be there. It's all about this mindfulness of all the parties which are included in there. And basically, there are people who work in their day-to-day routines who are not willing to make the changes, but inevitably we should make these changes. As Mike Beadle has stated, Mike Beadle is actually an author of several books on enterprise scrum. He said that we either need to grow unicorns or transform our dinosaurs into unicorns.
In other words, people for like years are resistant to change, but at some point we need to get there.
Yes, exactly.
Thank you, Ammar, for being with us today.
Thank you for listening to the Authority Partners podcast. Stay tuned for the next episode and be sure to follow us on social networks.